This is Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast, with your hosts, Brandon Spinner and Michael Burns.
And welcome into another episode of Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. I, as always, am Brandon Spinner, alongside my buddy, my pal, my friend, Michael Burns, who makes the second part of Barrels and Barrels. Mikey, how you doing tonight, my man?
I am doing fantastic, Brandon. I am doing fantastic. I am excited for today.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. That's right. Sweet shirt you got on there.
Yeah, this is a one of a kind, but the one you're wearing is also a sweet shirt, and we dropped in a couple of podcasts earlier. We do have some shirts to sell, so if you want a shirt that Michael's wearing, if you're watching on YouTube, you can check that out. I guess we could post a picture on our story on Instagram and see if somebody wants to join in on that. Reach out to us. We already had a couple of people reach out and order one. I know Jonathan Roy. We've got Eric Mounier, who's a good listener out in South Dakota, and our one and only Ben. We also like to call him at Bourbon in the Burrow. It's the only Ben that we know that listens, but at Bourbon in the Burrow, he generously bought a shirt. So big thank you to each and every one of you so far for all of your support. We always love to give out shout outs. Thank you to each and every one of you who continue to give your feedback. I know Lisa gave us some feedback on a previous episode. So we want to bring you the best and the most fun and enjoyable experience possible. Real quick, before we jump into the later portion of this episode, I do want to say, can you please give us a follow or a subscribe on YouTube? Just hit the subscribe button, and if you're not there, head on over there. If you're listening in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever podcast platform you've chosen, please review us and rate us. Give us your thoughts. We'd love to hear what you think, what we could do better, what we do that you really like, and we'll continue to try to get better each and every week. So with that said, Michael, pretty exciting night on the way tonight.
I am. I am very excited for this.
Yeah. So for those of you who didn't read the text in this podcast,
For those of you that can't read the text below, Brandon's going to spill it out for you.
We've got a first interview, and it's one that I'm excited about. It's going to be with the first distillery that we are talking with, Stranahan's out of Denver, Colorado. They're solely single malt distillery, so this is not a bourbon podcast. This is a single malt podcast, and this is going to be the first single malt that we have on our podcast. Really excited. I've known Tyler for a while, and it just happened to line up that we are able to interview him. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome in a distiller from Stranahan's, Tyler Glasser. We are happy to have you here on Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. First of all, thank you so much for your time. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. First off, I am no longer a distiller, actually. I have been the last 7 years, but I'm plant operations here, and I run kind of the planning and procurement. So I'm not technically a distiller, but I definitely have a heavy hand in a lot of the things down there.
But you have distilled in the past, correct?
Yes, yeah. I've got about 7 years of distilling experience, but here I'm in an office job. I'm not down on the floor running the stills right now. So.
Okay. Well, tell us your path. What led you to Stranahan's? I know you were in Chicago at one point, right?
Yeah. So start from the beginning, I guess. It's funny. I find a lot of people in this industry have art degrees, have different paths that kind of just led us by wayward to getting to the spirits industry as a whole. Something more than just bartending or super on the surface level. Mm-hmm. But I think that's where a lot of us started. I have 2 art degrees, and I was kind of out of between art jobs, bartending at a local neighborhood joint, and then my wife and I moved to Evanston, Illinois, from another part of Chicago, and Few Spirits was a really great local bourbon rye distillery that was 3 blocks away from our house. And so I kind of stumbled in one day and started talking. It was my early 20s at the time, and then I kind of just started talking to the tasting room manager and kind of poked around. I'm like, hey, you guys ever hiring distillers? I think it'd be really cool to get here, you get your hands wet and get in there and actually make the spirits. And they weren't at the time, but they offered to let me come volunteer bottling and stuff. So I did that for 6 months almost, and kind of basically
the door.
Yeah, it totally did, because I worked for free for a while, and then finally they were they did have a big expansion, and they doubled their distillation shifts and their bottling crew too. And so I was hired on. I was actually getting paid then to bottle for about a week, and then one of the distillers ended up taking another job somewhere, and so
Oh wow.
the director there of distilling, Steven was his name. He approached me and was like, do you actually want to go do the production side? Because you mentioned that a lot in your interview. Because I definitely went in the interview being like, I want to make this stuff. Like, I don't mind getting dirty and throwing grain in the, doing all the work, filling the barrels, moving around. But so for 1 week I was a bottler, and then I immediately went into assistant distiller. Like, so it was pretty good serendipitous like transition. I was like, oh sweet, like it's exactly
That's
what I wanted
awesome.
to do. And it was a very small operation. There was only like we outputted a ton of volume, but it was only three distillers and a head distiller. So
Oh
there's
wow.
basically like a 1 in 4 chance if you're drinking a few bourbon at nowadays. I personally distilled it because
Cool.
most of our stuff's about 4 to 5 years, 4 to 7 years old there, and I was there 3 4 years ago. So all that stuff I was putting down for over the course of 5 years. I was at few. Um, yeah, just learning the ins and outs of bourbon and rye to a very good level. Like learning
Yeah.
about yeast health and grain and how to saccharification and the super like thermodynamics and chemistry of distilling. I was fascinated by that, so I'd take a lot of online like free college chemistry courses and then thermodynamic courses just to really understand, because a lot of the high level distillers around the country have like chemical engineering degrees, and I don't have that. I have 2 art degrees, so I had to kind of like, I want to have the lingo even if I don't have a master's in chemical engineering, but at least I
Right.
can like talk with one of them and kind of know what they're saying if they're talking about something like long chain, carbohydrates and the whiskey lactones and stuff. But I yeah, so I was at Few Spirits in Chicago for about 5 years, and then I kind of got a little. I got the itch to be creative again, and it was just a bourbon and rye factory when it comes down to it. It was really fun, but after
Yeah.
a while, it's kind of a factory, and I wanted to express myself, and so I ended up taking a head distiller job in little old Kalamazoo, Michigan, at a place called Green Door Distilling Company. To That gave me full creative control, so I got to like redesign their entire portfolio. I got to like put out an Amaro and put out my own. Like, I love making gin, so I was really into developing an herbal gin.
Hmm.
I definitely did a few different whiskeys that were pretty cool. They're still in barrels. Unfortunately, I left before we harvested those because I was only there for about 2 years. But so some whiskeys, did some source projects that were pretty cool, some barrel finishes, which is pretty common nowadays. I mean, how many times you get MGP products, vanity brands,
Hmm.
finishing something in maple barrels or whatever barrels, and no one really cares that it's sourced juice. I mean, MGP's, that's the biggest
Right.
distillery in the world. so
There's
so
a
I
good
definitely some
chance most of
source.
the stuff that's on your bar is from
Yeah,
MGP or similar.
yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, and so I like but I still always like to be creative even with the source projects. So I would use local stuff. Like we did bourbon finished in local cider barrels. That was pretty cool.
Oh,
Kind of had
cool.
like a nice dry, I mean, it was all single origin, really dry cider, nothing sweet or anything, just something kind of give it like beautiful apple notes in the end, but no sweetness. And yes, I was there, and then we kind of my wife and I, we had had a baby and decided we wanted to move a little closer to some support. So Denver is
For
her whole
sure.
family lives in Denver, so it was in the cards to maybe come back. And I love Colorado. I lived here
Yeah.
for 5 years when I went to school here, and I couldn't wait to get back to the mountains. And I have tons of friends here too from 10 years ago when I last lived here. So it was a really easy move back. Like we immediately we moved back in June of this last year here, and it was Stranahan's. To get into Stranahan's, that was just beautiful timing. I Finding head distiller gigs and anything of that caliber or have that even that pay scale or benefits are impossibly niche and small,
Hmm.
and so the fact that this plant operations job popped up and it was what I needed like a stable work schedule, not working the stills till 1 in the morning, which I was doing
Yeah.
in Chicago, or Saturday nights from 2 to midnight. This was like a 9 to 5 benefits, and I'm super entwined in the business. So I'm like way more in the business end now. A lot of long term planning, a lot of procurement. I kind of bring in all the barrels for barrel finishing. I start those projects. I do a lot of the grain transfers. I do a lot of single barrel program. I kind of in charge of a lot of
Okay.
that, and we sell a lot of
Hmm.
single barrels. We did like 700 something last month, or last year, 700
I
single
was gonna
barrels,
say
50
last
pounds.
month. Wow.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
no, that'd be unmanageable. This is like
Yes.
10% of my week is like single barrels. That would be like 100% of everything. So I do
So you're
single barrel
saying there's a
program.
chance?
But that's a big thing. So I get to still walk the rack houses and kind of help select barrels or kind of do that kind of stuff. And definitely when it comes to blends, like we'll probably talk about today, like the newest Snowflake release,
Yeah.
that was definitely a roundtable discussion with me and a few of the other guys here, the production manager and warehouse manager, and a couple other guys because our head distiller actually left
Yeah. I was
last
gonna ask
August.
Owen, right?
Yep, Owen Martin for Angel's Envy, and that's awesome. I'm so stoked for him. Like it's great. You know, the first distiller before him, Rob, left to do Metallica's whiskey, and then so
Oh, okay.
Owen left to
Yeah.
do Angel's Envy. So it's a good springboard to go do your dream distilling job. I feel like if you're getting
Yeah.
that level here, but regardless, we were
Wow.
absence of a head distiller, so it was by committee. We decided to do this last blend here, at least the final tweaks. Owen had set
Right.
the original blend, but then we kind of had to narrow it down. We had about 15 barrels picked out, and we had to take it down to 10, and then kind of blend those again, those 10. So it's a huge process. We can talk about that when we start tasting this and stuff.
So with the loss of Owen, like you guys are without a master distiller or a head distiller, how are you guys handling that as a crew outside of the Snowflake project, like just day to day operations?
Well, a lot of it, I mean, honestly, a lot of it because I have that history of head distiller and kind of running it, so I definitely kind of dip, my hand in more than I probably should, but like I'll take charge. A lot of it's honestly it's a big company, so sometimes it's just sometimes there could be some finger pointing, some like not me, not me, not me,
Yeah.
and so I don't mind. I love doing it, so I'm like me, like and so I like we got another sherry cask finish coming up that it's like I told one of the distillers like we got to go pull samples of 10 of the barrels and we got to start seeing if it's going to work and how we have to
Yeah.
tweak that final blend. And so me, I would say myself and the production manager Anders and the director of all distilling operations Pete Maka, who's head of like all North American
Hmm.
distilleries for Proximo. But I got to talk about Proximo too. But um, yeah, us three alone are kind of really heavy in those final decisions right now until we kind of pin down a head blender. They went with a head blender instead. They're changing the title a little bit, some of the roles,
Yeah.
but it is missed. We all are working kind of way more than we probably normally would because of that. Like, but it's all fun, you know. I'm passionate as hell. Like I'm always,
That's awesome that
we're
you
at
can be in
a holiday
something
party
and
and
yeah, that's awesome you can be in passion in something you're doing already.
yeah, we're at the holiday party, and Pete Mack and my boss was like, he's like, to my wife, he's like, this guy doesn't shut the hell up about whiskey. And I was like, I don't, because I love it. I'm fascinated. I'm a nerd. I love making it, and I'm super into it. So it's,
And what I find awesome is this is a whole different type of whiskey than you were dealing with at Few. Like you said, that was
yeah,
bourbon rye. This is all single malt.
it's
And
all malt whiskey. It's all single malt. It's so it's really cool. I'm glad you brought that up because it is. I also thought it as a way to like round my career a little bit. When I initially got this job, even just 7 months ago, I think in back of my mind, I was like, oh, this is a great way to like work this for a while and then start my own distillery someday. But like, I kind of changed gears and like, I don't know if I'd mind to join the corporate world a little more just to kind of follow a different path. Like someone in my position, two people ago is now vice president of Templeton Rye. So like, it
oh,
really does
okay,
open up
yeah,
that like the whole, like you just learn the lingo, I'm talking with corporate, I'm talking with the, not necessarily the owner of Proximo, but like his underlings, and just it's yeah, I'm in some high level meetings of million dollar decisions, close to $1 billion decisions with stuff, and it's cool. It's a different world than craft spirits.
yeah.
Um, and there are craft spirit problems. We're running out of warehouse space, and that's always an issue with barrels and stuff in production. Right now, we're doing about 3,600 53-gallon barrels a year, new fill, and we've
3,600.
got
Okay.
probably 800 plus refills with stuff, sherry cask, tequila cask, rum cask, everything under the I did our specialty cask inventory, like a reconciliation a couple months ago. We had like 800 different, not different barrels, but like 80 tequila, 40 in rum casks, some in
Oh
South
wow.
American rum casks, like maple barrels. Shit, we got like 40 of those. Like I know that's a popular one right now, maple cask finish. We've got stuff that's been a maple barrels for 4 years. Like so, it's cool. There's a giant pool of stuff to make blends from and to like make projects happen. And so it's not really intimidating. It's not that's really great. It's not the difficult part isn't it's like I'm not like I'm spinning NGP into something. I'm literally got
Right.
such a great well of stock behind me. We've got 20,000 barrels aging in inventory right now.
Oh wow.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
it's great. And yeah, I don't know. It's cool. We can talk about it later.
Across how many rick
I got a really
houses?
cool story about Owen Martin telling me something. I guess should we just go into that too? I don't know.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. What did Owen
as
tell
much as
you?
I could from Owen before he left because he's really super knowledgeable what he does, what he did here, and he's awesome, dude. The biggest thing that stuck with me was like, how do you approach these super complex snowflake blends? Because like there are like 10 different finishes blended together to do like the 2023, for instance. And so what was really cool to think about is that he chunks it out into like two or three that he know work together, and then he'll build that out. So he doesn't see like 10 different casks. He'll do like, I know sherry and tequila play well together because we did this little experimental project, before. So he just sees, okay, we could use sherry and tequila to get this flavor, this level of flavor. Well, then I know rum works well with Cabernet barrels. So like you can layer that level on, and then it's from there it's just a little bit of it's just percentages. Do you want your base to feel more of like a rum cast, more of a wine cast, more of a this or that, and we can boost those notes of saccharine wine, or boost those notes of whichever flavor profile base you're going for. And then again, it's just layering on chunks of things that work well. And I thought that was such a cool philosophy for managing really complex, like thinking of like Compass Box or someone like does like really cool blends. The big one, Barrel Craft Spirits, right now is doing
Yep.
really interesting, great blends. I love Seagrass and some of
Yeah.
those Amita
We
casks
just
is
did a
great.
Vantage one the other day. A couple weeks
Vintage,
ago, we had Vantage.
that's cool. I like their Amitas, the Pomaro. I think their Amitas cask and Seagrass, the ones
Hmm.
I've had. Maybe Dovetail too. But regardless, that's really popular right now too. That idea of like blending really unique things.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really cool philosophy that I was really the biggest thing I took away from Owen. I only worked with him for about 2 or 3 months before he left, but it was like I was constantly bugging his ear, like trying to learn
Yeah.
every little tidbit of like my head blender at a major company, Head Distiller, whatever you want to call it, whatever master. It's all the terminologies, but um, that was the coolest thing I took from him before he left was that like don't think about the minute level if something is really complicated. Try to think about it like breaking it up to the next level. Like, do these two things work together with these two things? And then like instead of one, it was like these two can go well with these three. There's 5 components that just made this blend really unique, but they all work together. So
So that's what would differ the Snowflake from the rest of your regular line, like your original, your Blue Peak, and
yeah,
the
none of those
sherry
are none of
cask.
those are blends at all. They're all, I mean, they're all single malt. They're all single malt whiskey, but I'm saying they're all I mean, they're different blends of like ages. Obviously, like
Yeah.
our yellow label is like a blend of like 4 to 7 year old with different percentages of different years, and like our blue peak is like a fooder kind of thing, but it's also just a blend of like I think 3 to 6, like it's a little less. But Snowflake is the one that has all the different finishes in it, and we do some experimental finishes, but that's like the big blend of uniqueness. It's going for being a snowflake, being super unique, like one of a kind. So every
Right.
year we do a different blend, and it's generally pretty different. And then it's really exciting to see those. I've tasted probably the last like 5 or 10 years expressions, and they're all really cool in their own ways, but they're so different from each other. But it's all that
Yeah.
same Stranahan's going into the beginning, but it can just go so many different directions with different ages coming into play. This year's Snowflake was an average age of about 8 to 10 years, so it's like a little bit older too, which was nice.
Yeah, nice.
So
And
yeah,
how long are those like in the experimental casks outside of the eight to
years,
10?
Years.
Years
So,
in those experimental
yep.
casks.
So basically, about when I'm saying the base liquid for, I think all of it was at least 7 years primary aging. So new American oak, and then about 1 to 3 years in the finishing oaks in like the wine barrel or rum barrel
Yeah.
or tequila cask.
As I read the tag here, it says, in homage to the 25 iterations of Snowflake, Humboldt Peak showcases an array of favorite finishes while celebrating longevity in maturation. Starting with a 9-year base, our distillers have harmonized a collection of worldly cask finishes, including Cabernet Sauvignon. Did I say that right?
Sauvignon.
Caribbean rum, Oloroso sherry, and the result reveals a vibrant red fruit note with the natural nuttiness and gentle oak backbone. So, yeah, that's interesting. You said 10 different types of blends or finishes in this?
Shit, I don't know off the top of my head. It was something like that. I think it was maybe eight different components, and there might have been like 2 barrels of two of them in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was 10 different barrels for sure, and then I think 8 of them were unique, and then one of them might have been 2 rum barrels, I think, and like 2 wine barrels in there. So it was not one of everything, but
So this is the 25th batch. Does that mean it's been 25 years? Because I know the company's only been around
no,
since '04, right?
they've done a couple of years early on where they did like 2 or 3 in a
Okay.
year, but well, as of the last, I think 6 or 7 years, it's been 1 a year. But I want to say that the first few years they were,
Multiple
they were,
runs.
yeah, different.
So this, for those of you just listening or trying to figure out what we're talking about, it's the Stranahan Snowflake. It's just a distillery only, right? Just at the distillery.
Yeah, you
there
got to
in
wait
Denver.
in line. Some people started waiting over 48 hours in advance. It's a huge thing though. We do a big party for it. Like we got live music for 12-hour set blocks of some of the days. We got like movies playing on the walls, like outside projection. This is winter too. It's Denver in December,
Yeah,
so it's not
first or
like you're
second week of December.
you're in a
Yeah,
park, drinking like a coffee and whiskey or something out there, and it's a camaraderie thing. It's a trial by fire.
It's a good time.
It's a good time. You can tell story. Like no one really complains about it. They're here. They're here to have fun and to have that lore behind it. Like, oh, I camped out for 2 days to get this bottle. I mean, how common is that down in Kentucky for birthday bourbon or something? People will camp out for a day or
right.
whatever. That's the most exclusive release you can find, like in Denver, is this Stranahan Snowflake. So
That's awesome.
it brings 3,000 people. It's
Oh wow!
it's crazy.
And how many bottles did you guys have? Do you know? Off the top of your head,
Top of my head.
the bottle I have here says
I think we
1728, so it's got to
sold-
be more than that.
It was how many? What'd you say?
This says 1728 on it, so there's got to be more than that.
Yeah, no. It was. I want to say we did 3,600 bottles. Yeah, something like that. It was something like it's around 4,000, and then
Okay.
we sold out at like 3,000 some because we reserved like a couple hundred for just archive and like.
Yeah.
You can still come to the tasting room throughout the year and taste the Snowflake expression,
Okay.
but you can never buy it anymore. You can only buy it that one day. And I did attend. I did work Snowflake, and it was sold out within like 3 hours. Basically, I think we started at 11, and it sold out by 2, so I guess 4 hours.
Wow.
But it's crazy. I was doing a little station. We had little activations along the line because we have a huge line queue once you start the bottle sales. And I was just handing out free pours of Snowflake, basically, of
Yeah.
past years to thousands, a couple thousand people, just hyping them up. There was other stations of trivia. You could win like, stuff, shirts and stuff.
That's cool.
But it's a big deal. We put a lot of effort into it, and it's realistically, I mean, we do $400,000 in sales in like three hours. Like it's insane.
That's probably a big moneymaker for the distillery itself too.
It's something like 30% of the yearly revenue is like Snowflake, like one day. It's really big. So it's crazy.
That's incredible.
Well, and then the bar's open, that whole time that the 48 hours
Yeah.
people are camping, like they've got outdoor bar setups in the parking, the patio area, and
Yeah.
it's you just gotta look at videos of it. It's pretty cool. It's a whole festival, we call it Snowflake Festival, and it's
Yeah, we'll have to find a link and toss it into the bio of this.
you gotta come next year. This guy's
well, that's
pilgrimage.
definitely for sure, and have our own video of it. Now, what I do want to ask you is, you guys are the oldest and the biggest in Colorado regarding distilleries, right? Talk to me and Michael about, like, obviously what makes whiskey different in Kentucky than in Tennessee is the climate, right? Denver and Colorado, way different climate than what you're seeing here into the Ohio River Valley. Mm-hmm. What do you see so far that it's done climate-wise, whiskey-wise, to the just even single malt itself, or just in whiskey in general?
Yeah. Well, for sure, you see a different, rapid aging is because of the hot and dry. We're close to desert climate. It's not quite, it's not Southwest. Because I got a buddy who runs a distillery, Whiskey Del Bach, down in Tucson, and that's like Angel Share just crushes their barrels.
Oh, I bet.
But like here we see. I was doing a bunch of analysis on our 10-year-old release, and we were close to 62% Angel Share loss, which is pretty high. So you're looking at
in 10 years,
less than half of the barrel in 10 years, which is pretty extreme. You'd probably get about 45% in Kentucky with that 10-year span. So it's substantial. It's about 30% higher Angel Share loss than a humid hot. Humid and hot's going to keep it in. And it's going to jack your proof up a little bit.
Right.
Our proof's super stable with this hot and dry here because it's just evaporating. It's taking out more alcohol, I think, than water too. So we don't see massive hazmat, Elijah Craig shit. We go in the barrel at 110 and we come out like 120-ish sometime, 125 maybe, but like I've never seen 130 in any of the records, or like any, even 126 or 7 is unheard of. So, got a cast strength right next to me at 114.
Yeah, I was going to say, what kind of cast strengths do you put out? Is it just the single barrel program, or do you have your own like cast strengths?
Well, I'm sorry. What was the question though? How?
So do you guys have a cast strength bottle, or is it just the single barrels that come out as your cast
all
strength?
Single barrels that we do for accounts are cast strength, and so there's all a variety if they depend. The one I just one on my desk that I have a hand. This one is only a 4.7-year-old. And it was only at 114. So again, it only went up 4 proof in like 4.5, like almost 5 years.
Wow.
This one's cool though because it's for the Stanley Hotel. Pretty cool. We can't sell incomplete cases when we do the single barrel bottling. So sometimes there's extras. And I was like, Stanley Hotel is so historic, and it came by as like right in October, and I was like, oh man, I love The Shining, and I love Estes Park. And so I definitely snagged that one for my desk. I was like, I was going to drip some like red wax down it or something, make it look kind of spooky.
Michael, you have any questions for Tyler?
That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just talking my ass off. So please, speak. It's your podcast. Like,
hey, no, we're happy to learn and talk.
From what all you're saying, there's so much more to distilling whiskey, bourbon than I could even pretend I know.
And every time I made a jump, it's really like a different level of schooling. Like, it was like my, college education almost. Then master, not master. I hate master distiller. I hate that term. Head distiller, production manager was my title in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And that was a lesson in supply chain management. So that was like serious, and it was pandemic. So it was really difficult. But like, that was like, I'm truly on my own. I need grains, barrels, yeast. I need to troubleshoot if something goes wrong. And then coming here, it's like, well, now I'm working with like multi-million dollars worth of stock and like of whiskey, whiskey stocks and aging inventories. And then I'm also in charge of Tin Cup too, which is a major brand. So, so that is also, I guess going back, I didn't mention, I work for Proxima Spirits, which is a parent company that owns Stranahan's and Tin Cup. They also own Jose Cuervo, Three Olives Vodka, Hangar One Vodka, Black Dirt Distilling out of New York, Bushmills. Like, we're all over the world, but I just focus on Stranahan's because I live here in Stranahan's. It's called Proxima Distillers, Colorado. So I work on Stranahan's and Tin Cup as my primary, and then I've got a couple other distilleries in North America that I also follow their production, track their stuff, do procurement for them, evaluations, reconciliations, a lot of inventory, a lot of data. definitely, Pete Mockel asked me like, what different, like, angel share loss percentages, like, what are we looking like? How can we hit our long-term goals for, say, 10-year-old Stranahans? What do we look like in like 2028? Like, are we going to have enough stock to hit sales projections? So long-term planning is something that I'm really learning here because it's always been about short-term gains and craft spirits. Like, you're always like,
Yeah.
how can we hit the market right now? And let's, what's the hottest finish we can get our hands on? Some Ambarana barrels or some whatever. And so it's definitely like you're playing against the vogue. You're playing against like what's popular as your craft spirits. You're trying to maximize your sales almost to stay alive. And Proximo, like, Strand is so set. You're working on like, how can my sales increase 5% every year? Can we hit those with our, whiskey we put down 5 years ago? And like, how
Right.
many new products can we roll out? Like, we're going to do, I think, a 12-year Stranahans next year as well. And so we have to also plan for our 10-year, our 12-year. We got to have aging stock for like things like our Diamond Peak release and
Mm-hmm.
our Snowflake. So like, it's a lot of like moving the peas around and kind of
Yeah.
figuring out where can we hit these certain goals and stuff. And so that falls a lot on me. A lot of my boss asked me today, like, we have sherry cask bottling coming up, like our corporate wants X amount of cases. Do we have the inventory to do that? And if we don't, we got to think about supplementing with a little bit of tweaking things here and there to get it.
Yeah.
um,
So when it comes to the process of picking out the Snowflake, right? You said this was 10 different barrels, right? With different finishes. When do you start the planning process for 2023? Are you already in that? Do you know what the barrels
we're
are going to
talking about
be?
it. We're not talking about the blend yet. We've got some ideas. Owen was super like, helpful in like laying down groundwork and like guidelines for like 2023 and even some 2024 releases. So like,
Oh, wow.
we've got a recipe we can start with, and then it'll be on us to like actually execute it and improvise. Um, but we're definitely talking a little bit about it already. January, what's 5th? Like, we're like, and this
Yeah.
release is just first week of December. So we're talking
Yeah.
about it now because I like Owen's methodology was to basically get it all harvested at least 6 months in advance, blend it, and then put it back in the barrels to finish like the marrying.
Oh, oh, so it's all married together when you.
It's all married
Wow.
together.
Okay.
Yep. So, and then we're even tweaking the final finishes. So it was married together in like 12 or 14 barrels. And then we took those married barrels and picked out our 10 favorite from that to like weed it
Oh,
down.
wow.
So it's multiple steps of blending, reblending, and editing to get to that final blend. Um, and
A
so
lot of
that's
work.
something we start now. We're gonna really shift focus to where we have a major event in summer called Cast Thief. That is
Okay.
it's kind of like a summer snowflake, except for it's a bunch of micro releases. We do about I think it's 6 or 8 specialty one-off cask finishes that are 375 bottles. Damn, I don't think I have any here right now. I was gonna pull one up. But Yeah, so those are like the really cool micro release we do. Big party, you can only buy them that day. We only, produce maybe like 200 of each expression, like 200 bottles. But that
Mm-hmm.
gives us the data to also do future blends. Like I was saying earlier, like we had they do fun names, like Sherry Garcia was one that was a sherry slash tequila barrel blended together finish. And or there's like a Wheat of the Moment was like a wheated bourbon barrel finish one. And they always think of fun puns for those. But right now we have to start planning out that event that's in June. We just got to start selecting from our specialty cask inventory, start blending some of them if we want to do some kind of complex compound ones. And yeah, so that's our focus right now. But in the back burner, we're talking Snowflake already. Just Cast Thief will definitely take priority until probably April. Hopefully by then we're kind of done with all that, and then we kind of really start hitting Snowflake because we want at least 6 months breathing time for it to blend and to kind of get all in there. I think right when I started last year, the first week of June, um, Owen was coming up to me with preliminary Snowflake blends. One was like, had me tasting them and like giving him
Yeah.
feedback. And then he was like taking that. He was going to a few of us up here that we know our stuff. And so he'd come to the expert tasters and be like, hey, how do you, what do you think of this? What should I do with it? Um, So yeah, by mid year we have to really be like getting it set.
So do you have like specific barrels that are in the warehouse that are like off hands? Like, hey, we're not blending with these. These are off hands for long term plans that someone has.
Um, I think that's something that we suffer from. We don't really have a lot of safeguards for that, and I think that could eventually bite us in the ass. But it's I don't know. It's so exciting, But at the same time, like again, what I was saying, we have like finished projects that have been in there. I've got like maple casks that have been there for 5 years, like single
Oh,
Oh
malt
wow.
that's been in the maple barrel for 5 years, like so like it's almost like you don't know what to do with them too. There's like
Yeah.
we have a problem that we're so large that like we can't just willy nilly buy like barrel finishes as much as we want to because we've already had that phase and now we have hundreds of barrels, but we don't have enough to do like a release. Like so, I think this was an important just mentally that I learned recently. This is a note I took from our director Pete was that because I was geeked out about these Foursquare rum barrels that like broker just got in because I'm handling a lot of the barrel procurement. And I was like, oh, we need to get these. We need to get these. Like, hey, we're talking like at least 8. And it's like, can I get more? Like, kind of like, and
Yeah.
he's like, well, we just have to look at our aging rum, barrel inventory and look at our future planning and see like, is it sustainable? Like, if you like these Foursquare rum barrel thing, if it's really good, we want to be able to get a lot of them, like 100 of them at least, so we can do a major like a Diamond Peak release is about 100 barrels. So right now we're planning our next Diamond Peak release, which is one of our more exclusive. It's like a $80, 75, like $80 bottle. It's at least 7 years old, going into those secondary finishes,
Mm-hmm.
and we need about 100 barrels on average to hit like a pretty good market target of, I think it's like 5,000 cases physical cases. So he comes to me and is like, I really want these Foursquare rum barrels. I'm saying that to him, and he's like, well, you need to find out if it's sustainable. So like, can we grow this? Because if it's a good thing, you can't just be like, oh, this is really cool, but we only have 3 barrels of it, and that's it. Like,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
because we'll generally try something out with like 4 barrels, 8, 10, whatever. But then we want to be able to know if we can order 100 next time because we want to maybe do this as a national release because Diamond Peak is a national release product.
Yeah.
So that was a different mentality for me too, because but coming into it, I was like really like, oh, I want to get these great unique barrels. I don't care how many there are, if there's like 1 or 2 or 5 or whatever. But it's like I'm at a level and I'm at a distillery now where it's like, no, we can't just be grabbing 4 barrels at a time. We need to like at least we have to know that if those are really great, can we scale them up and can we get them for cheaper because we're gonna,
Right.
So
if they're
those
super
barrels, is there like a barrel magazine that gets shipped to you and you read, every oh, here's what here's what's the latest and greatest and
No, we have a procurement department above me as well that works on it. That I kind of working on a micro level. Like I usually go through like Rocky Mountain Barrel Company because they're local. Northeast Barrel Company. Some of these major barrel brokers around the country, they're the ones getting in those like fancy barrels. We got like 25 maple casks from Northeast, a couple months ago, and we got some. There's like a trendy Austrian oak barrel right now, like Takaji or something like that. We just got a few of those in.
So how do you know what's
Like it's like
trendy? Is there like a secret whiskey, distillery society that you guys talk? Hey, here's what's going to be the hottest thing. We're all going to hit the market, kind of this, or do you guys just kind of find
No.
what you like and you experiment on your own?
I think the barrel brokers drive that more than people want to think.
Okay.
I think they get in, 25 distillery owners' ears and go like, "Hey, this is the next hottest barrel. You need this." I think Ambarana wood is blowing up right now, which is like that South
Mm-hmm.
American kind of really cinnamon forward, really interesting wood. I think that there's certain things you're going to see a lot of. I saw like Fred Minnick's list had like 2 Ambarana barrels on there, and like so that's a really unique finish that's kind of coming up, a different wood grain. It's really hard to work with. Like I hear,
Mm-hmm.
Gariana oak is something that you hear a lot of Pacific Northwest people using Westland and Rogue, and anyone in the Pacific Northwest is using Oregon oak is Gariana oak.
Yeah.
Um, McCarthy's. So I think it's I don't know. You're kind of playing. There's no crystal ball. You're just kind of hoping for what fits. And I think it's important to think about what fits your culture, your audience.
your name, your brand a
You
little
know, like
bit.
we don't focus on some big peated release or anything. Like I think there's a lot of American single malt really has such a gambit right now. And it's in its infancy. You know,
Right,
the
and that's
oldest American malt whiskey brand is McCarthy's, and that was only like the late '90s. So
well, and that the TTB this summer just finally put out their like American single malt whiskey definition, right? Like, isn't that
yeah,
still in the works?
that took over 10 years to pass. That's talk about moving legislation, and it's
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah.
creep.
So now that we have this, how does that help you guys?
That I think that just gives definition like that is important because American malt whiskey in general suffered for so long being in the other category. Like in most
Yeah,
American liquor stores, it would just be other. Maybe it's pigeonholed next to Irish whiskey.
yep,
Maybe it's by Scotch. American whiskey in general is another new category. Like blends are pretty
yeah,
new. But I think it suffered for so long. People, stockists didn't want to carry as much of it because it's just it's not bourbon, it's not rye, it's not Scotch. So it's what is it? And I think giving it a definition is only going to lay the groundwork for it to for more stores, more smaller stores. I mean, like Total Wine and the major, your
yeah.
major ABC liquor stores and this and that are still gonna have American malt whiskey sections or this and that. But that's still a new thing too. That they've probably only just Total Wine probably had a section like that like 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. But
Yeah.
um, I think you're gonna see mom and pops understanding what it is as a category. Um, and I think brands like Stranahan's and Westland and Balcones,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
those feel like the three biggest right now, especially Balcones just getting acquired from Diageo. So you're going to see ad dollars behind Balcones
Mm-hmm.
single malt whiskey a lot.
Well, in
Um,
Virginia Distillery, I think
Virginia,
they
yeah, yeah, I think their name gets thrown there a lot too. They're
mm-hmm.
also, but they source a lot of their malt from Highlands, Scotland, I believe. But yeah, they do
Ah,
make their own stuff too. But I feel for the longest time that was a I was thrown off thinking they were making it all there, but they were sourcing from Scotland,
okay.
a lot of their stuff. Yeah, so I'm just saying I think we're going to see more. It's only going to help all of those guys more so, but giving it
Yeah.
a definition. You know,
Yeah.
you can compare an apple to apple. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
say if you like bourbon, you might like Stranahan's. Like,
Right. Well, and that's a great segue because we're going to jump into trying this, the three of us. You were kind enough to reach out and say, hey, I might be able to get you a bottle of this. So thank you for that. Stranahan Snowflake. So 47% alcohol by volume. So it's coming out to 94 proof for those of you listening. One thing I did want to ask you about the uniqueness of the bottle. Obviously, there's a story behind that all the time, right? But what's with the shot glass on the top? Like, do you guys have a story, a background on how that came about? Like, because that's what sticks out the most when it's on the shelf to me.
I think that I actually I don't know the history of that per se. I never asked that before the cup, the steel cup.
Yeah.
But I think that harkens back to when Stranahan's wanted to be more of a Western kind of we call it cowboy whiskey, but like it wanted to be more of
Mm-hmm.
that Western feel. And I feel like that accomplished that on some level. Like that accomplished that kind of like Wild West,
Yeah.
saloon kind of thing, like a teal, like you drink out of a tin cup kind of thing. Which,
I can hear that from Rifleman right now.
but
I just see it.
yeah, I got them all over the place. There's like one in my drawer, like 'cause I gotta procure these, by the tens and hundreds of thousands. Um, but yeah, that's definitely become part of our, the whole facade.
The brand, yeah. So I'm going to do my best Pat Hughes impression, as we all know the Cubs, and describe the bottle. Stranahan's, it kind of looks like a Scotch bottle, right? You would think it comes in a tube, similar to those that you would normally see in the Scotch or the Irish whiskey aisle, or for those bourbon drinkers, it's about the size of an E.H. Taylor tube.
Yeah.
The white tube here with the mountains on it. Beautiful red lettering. It says Humboldt Peak, and that was the name of this release, correct?
Yes, yep. We name it after different 14ers in Colorado. So this
Cool.
was Humboldt. I think the previous ones were like Mount Ellis, Quandary Peak, like major 14,000 foot mountains of Colorado.
That's awesome.
Eventually, we'll run
So-
out. There's only like 52 of them. So,
Well, you're halfway through the 25.
so sorry. Did you guys taste it yet? You're just nosing it.
No, not yet.
I've
We were
been
waiting for
nosing
you.
it.
So as I go with my Pat Hughes description, so the bottle, white labels, obviously going along with the brand of Snowflake, looks just like every other Stranahan's bottle except the extra at the bottom. I think you only have these on your single barrels, right? Not all of the bottles have that extra label at the bottom, right? Or I
Yeah,
could be
so
wrong.
like our I think I've got a Distillery exclusive one like that. Usually, our like our specialty bottles do have that bottom vertical label like that.
Yeah.
But I actually
Mine doesn't have it. Yeah, mine doesn't have it.
is that an old sherry cask or Diamond Peak?
Sherry.
Oh, sherry, yeah, yeah. We've got there's a label. I mean, there's label changes, tweaks all the time.
So let's pop it open. You guys, well, Michael's poured his.
I'm sniffing it, nosing it. I try to go into the. I try not to look at like notes, like other notes of stuff if I haven't had it before.
Yeah, trying to bias yourself. Yeah, that's what I want to say
Right,
to the
yeah.
end. So you guys are kind of trying it.
Yeah, I've had it a couple times. I had it last week Friday on a Bourbon Thieves Den call, and then I had it last night just so I had it fresh on the mind as
Yeah.
it came in. I mean, it definitely smells different than the typical whiskey that Americans are buying right now, right? You can definitely tell the difference between it not being a bourbon or a rye. It's got that malt to me.
Right. It doesn't taste when I as a more bourbon focuser see single malt whiskey. I'm thinking Scotch flavor, peaty, and I get none of that on the nose.
Yeah, there's not gonna be any smoky barrels in this expression. I think we used a peated barrel, like one barrel last year, so it gives like a little hint of it. But this is not gonna have that. Yeah, I don't want to bias you. If you want to start tasting, then I can kind of talk about it. But I'd rather like you guys could jump into
Yeah.
it, and then we can kind of. So I could tell you what I taste, or you can tell what you taste, and like.
So, Michael, off the nose, what do you have?
I get more. I feel like it's more tropical on the nose. I don't get any smoke or oak. I feel like it's going to be a lighter, not a lighter flavor, but
I've
more of
got,
a fruity flavor.
Yeah, I've got a fruity. We made fun of this a couple weeks ago, but like in different nostrils, I get different notes. On the left nostril, I'm pulling more of the fruit. I do get more of a caramelish, oaky on the right side. I can definitely pull more of the woody part of it out of that side. You can definitely tell it's been in barrels for sure, but it doesn't have that normal sweetness. It's got more of a dry nose to me right off the bat. Have you sipped it yet, Mike?
Yeah, I sipped it. I don't know if I get the dryness. That's what I think. I'm surprised for a single malt. I don't get the dryness.
I thought it's funny you're saying it's gonna be light in flavor, and I'm like, this thing is a bomb of flavor.
Yeah, so I've done that first coat. And it's just it's a bomb, like you said, an explosion up front. Like I can't pinpoint a couple of different like one profile right away, and then it finishes out smooth. But yeah, it's an explosion right away.
So I'm gonna call it coconutty.
I think when you chew it, like do that, you really get the malt whiskey Scotch vibes a little bit. Like
Yeah.
I get that the sherry comes out, the creamy texture of the sherry. There's only one, maybe two sherry barrels in this blend, but it's there. You get that kind of creamy texturalness, that kind of vanilla frosting kind of note of sherry, but then the dryness. You get a ton of the wine, ton of the red wine Cabernet barrel. You can get that's on the nose. Particularly to me, I get the red wine and rum on the nose. That saccharine tropicalness could kind of be like turbinado sugar, kind of that kind of a dark brown sugar kind of note in the nose a little bit. I have smelled fruity rums that can even kind of have this profile a little bit. But then the flavor, when the palate hits, it's an explosion of like fruit forward. If you like bourbon, I mean, it's like a ton of those kind of stone fruit boom flavors. But then the texture, layers of textures. I was really impressed with this one versus a few other ones, and it's a tasty bottle. I think it's good.
Yeah, it's very good. To me, this gives me. I know you mentioned you hadn't had it, Tyler, but we did a Barrel Vantage a couple weeks ago, and then we just did a Middle West sherry cask finish. So it's going to have the sherryness to it. I kind of feel like those are down that same kind of path here. And it's even got like
Like
I
if you
called
brought
it
those two together.
yeah, if you put those two together, just like to bring our listeners and viewers in, like what I would describe it as, it's got more of a coconut oily coating to it too, right? It coats the mouth evenly to me. It's not thin by any means,
I think the wine is. I think that the wine in there is helping the coating too. I think that that's giving it a lot of legs, and is giving that saccharine kind of quality to it. Um, but again, almost like a sweet wine. There's no sweet wine finishes in this, but it almost comes across as like a, I don't know what do you call, like a really sweet wine of some kind of a. Yeah, drawing a blank right now.
I'm
but
not
like
a huge
Church,
wine
church
guy.
wine? Church wine?
I was thinking I got a Balcones. My buddy Chris Peel at Balcones sent me this Sauterne cast single malt, and
wow.
that's kind of what it reminds me of, like that sweet dessert wine kind of vibe going on. But there's definitely no dessert wine barrels in it. It's just that winey saccharine wine qualities with the sweetness of rum. And then there's a really fun cachaça barrel in there too, the South American rum, and I think that's adding a lot of that spicy character too, almost like a note of rye, very subtle but pepperiness, floral pink peppercorn. Something I would I get out of this. Spicy but like floral.
Mm-hmm. I just got like it reminded me of Christmas. Like it wasn't necessarily cinnamony, but it had like baking spice on the back.
Oh yeah, like
backside
nutmeg
of
and
the tongue.
star anise and
Yeah,
stuff, like warming
and
spices.
I wasn't expecting that, and that was. I mean, I've gone through my pour pretty quickly. I usually do though, because I'm
Yeah.
constantly chewing.
Yeah, I wish we could have got away with a little higher proof. To be honest, I was drinking it at cast strength, all the trials we did, but that's a corporate level way above us down that we've got to kind of do hit.
And I'm assuming a lot of that is to expand the amount of production.
That and just I think it's the tequila mindset, because you got to think like Proximo Jose Cuervo is their bread and butter, so like
Yeah,
it's kind of that mindset of like 80 proof is kind of a big standard for them, and so it bleeds into the brands a little bit. I mean, we still have cast strength stuff, but just not our major releases are usually around 90, 94, 92. Tin Cup even lower. Tin Cup's like 80, 84, sometimes 90 if it's rye. But it's still really good. I think, and honestly, at the lower proof, accentuates the fruitiness. Like having it at cast strength a lot, it was really cool and beautiful. But then, like, it's really different. You guys know if you add a couple drops of water to your pores,
right.
sometimes it bloom, and all those oils come out, and it's a whole bouquet. But I think, I think it's really nice at 90. I don't mind it at 90. Surprisingly, I wish it was higher, maybe like 95, 94, 100 even.
Do you have a range of your preferred pour, like whether Snowflake or not? Do you have a range from what you prefer? You prefer stuff no lower than this or no higher than this? What's your go-to range?
Well, I don't like hazmat stuff. I got Elijah Craig bottles at home I can't even drink that are like 140, and I'm like, I don't care how rough and tough you are, and you choke down your fire water and call it smooth. But like, I prefer. I like under 120, like 120 to like 95 to 120.
Okay.
That's
about what we say we like here too. About that bottle and bond area, 100.
Yeah, and 100's a nice number. There's a lot of science to 94 though that go back into like research studies and stuff. So like, I think 94. There was a vodka study that was done in the 60s or 70s. It's really interesting. You have to look it up. It's a scholar research article about vodka and from Russian scientists that determined like the perfect proof of spirit was like 94 proof. Like there's some molecular level that it was a threshold above the flocculation point, and like you'll notice like chill filtered things, if they get cold or if they're low, you put a little water, they will cloud up. That's a certain point threshold that 94 is above that. 90 is about right where you hit that. You have to chill filter below 90 or it could cloud up. That's just molecular level. That's a certain amount balance of equilibrium. But so
Googling it, Pappy 23 is 95.
You'll notice most major players like to keep right above 94. It's a common 92 to 95 is kind of a super like good range you want to be.
Sorry, I'm just laughing because Michael's kid's in the background. It's okay. Don't worry about it, Mikey. I can edit it out. I'm writing it down.
You noticed me mute all of a sudden, right? Real quietly.
All right, guys. I'm sorry. I got to start wrapping it up. I want to do this again, though, because I thought this was fun.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have you again. So I can start wrapping it up.
We'd love to hear what your experience and what's going on at the distillery today and such, and this week or something. This has been fun. I love hearing the insides.
What are you guys doing right now? I love that. That's funny. I love podcasting. What's your sales pitch right now? I mean, we got upcoming Diamond Peak release scheduled for probably February, so that'll be a national rollout. That's going to be to Extra Añejo tequila cask, finished Stranahan, super good. We basically tested out with the distillery exclusive the prior year. It's awesome, super amount of flavor, super cool, like spicy vegetal, but floral, but really unique. And then Castillos in June, so that's a big one if people are in Denver area. That's kind of an exclusive. One day we bring in a bunch of vendors and it's a party, and we're literally.
Is that the day that we should circle on our map for a barrels and barrels outing?
Barrels and stuff, like we have everyone set up at a different barrel station, and we're thieving into people's glasses, like cast strength, different finishes. It's like kind of like a, you get an entry for $60, whatever it is, and you get to try just cast strength whiskey all day. So that's cool. Besides that, those are the major releases. This next sherry cask batch is going to come up real soon too. We got that bottling next month.
Awesome.
That's a national release too. So like things around the country, you'll see the Diamond Peak release coming up, and our next level of sherry cask, which is it's batch 5 or something. I think I haven't looked at it.
Well, Tyler, we've enjoyed having you here on the podcast. As we've talked about, we're going to have you back because this has been great. Also,
we didn't even really talk baseball. We didn't even get the baseball.
I know.
You're,
come back and talk about, growing up a Kirby Puckett fan, or the being in the Chicago World Series.
Yeah. We'll have to do that and some whiskey next time. Maybe we'll just do it in person, head out to Denver or something like that.
That'd be cool. Wow. Yeah. I've got great conference rooms here that are full of that would be fun. We could borrow a real conference room for, do a nice podcast there too.
That would be fantastic.
Awesome.
Or the barrel house. We go surround ourselves with 20,000 barrels and just.
I'll bring some extension cords.
One of the guys' offices is in there. We could definitely sneak some. There's like an office in one of our warehouses. But
we'll have to talk about that.
No, I didn't even give it a tour either. Next time we'll do the. But thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course.
Congratulations
on being the first Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast. But this time we went Single Malt Whiskey podcast. Our first guest and our first interview. So thank you, and we appreciate the time, man.
I appreciate it.
Cheers.
Yep.
Sure, guys. Cheers.
Take it easy, Tyler. Thanks for joining us. And once again, we'd love to thank Tyler for joining us here on Barrels and Barrels of Bourbon and Baseball podcast. Our first official guest on the show. That was really cool, wasn't it, Mike?
That was what he was spitting out was so much more than I ever thought I knew about whiskey and bourbon and such.
Yeah, and that's, the more I do this, and the more I'm on Instagram, the more I do reading, the less I feel like I know about this industry, about this business, and that's really fascinating. And I learned a ton.
It tastes good.
It's brown. It tastes good. It's sweet. But big thank you to Tyler. We're going to have him on again. And for those of you listening, I hope you enjoyed it. We are a Bourbon and Baseball podcast, but we're not just solely bourbon. We've done rye. We've just now done our own single malt, the very first single malt. I'm excited to finally rate it now, right? Because we are a Bourbon and Baseball podcast that has a baseball-themed rating scale. So it's going to be hard, I think, because this doesn't fall on what our normal palates are, but on our scale, which ranges from Hall of Famer right at the top down to All-Star, which is second on the list, Everyday Player, which you can find coming in at third, which is basically just someone that's going to be in your everyday lineup, bench player, and then ultimately a DFA, which means don't want it on my shelf, don't want it in my lineup, get out of here, out of here.
You've been cut.
You've been cut.
Goodbye.
On the baseball scale. Where do you rate this on our scale, Mikey?
So, like you said, this is a not bourbon, which is what my palate really enjoys, what I enjoy. Mm-hmm. So maybe this is Barrels and Barrels, a brown water and baseball podcast, So But hey, this does not have the peatiness that you get out of non-bourbon, out of Irish whiskey, Scott, single malts. I had a single malt to compare it to real quick to side by side, and this guy right here has a nice explosion of flavor that I'm going to rate as an everyday player. If I could have a bottle of this on my shelf, I'd go to it often.
Yeah, everyday player is right in line about right where I'm going to put this because it's fantastic. I wish I had a bottle on the backside for an extra spare. What's cool is this is a distillery exclusive, but that also makes it a limited time offer, and this is a one of a kind. So, or one of 3,000, as Tyler mentioned earlier in the show. But I'm also going everyday player. The single malts that I've had, I've found very divisive. I either really liked it or didn't like it at all, and this one's right up there as the best that I've had so far. So,
yeah,
not
for
that
sure.
I dove in too deep into the American single malt category, if you want to call this Colorado single malt whiskey, because that's what's on the bottle. But it is American single malt.
He was calling it, he was calling it American single malt.
I'm just saying because they call it a Colorado American single malt because it's made in Colorado. But yes, it's an American single malt. Very good. I know most of our listeners won't get a chance to try this. What we will do is we'll probably have something down the line where we do a giveaway, give out a sample of this, because I really think you guys would enjoy this. I know some people out in Colorado who did wait in line for this, so awesome. Props to you. Would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I'm going to rate this an everyday player as well. Very good, and I learned a ton today, and I hope that I know you did, Mikey, but
for sure.
I hope everybody else listening is.
Open.
And it was really interesting.
Let us know your favorite part, what you thought was the most intriguing of it, of what Tyler had to spit out there, because he spit out a lot there. That was awesome.
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint it. I would say my favorite part was just like learning the processes that go into not just this bottle, but the single malt in general. But this bottle is so crazy that it's 10 different barrels, and they remarried it and then put it back into a barrel, which was very interesting to me. Rather than just blending it in a container and then bottling it, they blended it, put them in 14 different barrels, or was it he said 12 or 14, right? And
12, 14.
And then chose only 10 of those. So, like, what happened to the rest of that juice? Like, I wish I would have asked him that. And for those of you listening, Tyler also has a family, and he had prior obligations he had to attend. But we want to give him a big shout out and a big thank you for his time.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
We're just gonna have to go out to Colorado, go catch a Rockies game, and do a podcast live.
See some homers.
Yeah, see some home runs. And we didn't even get to talk baseball with them too, because off camera and off recording, we were talking baseball. We were talking about life, and I've known Tyler a while. I think I met him back in May. It was probably 2014 or 15. So it was before the Cubs had won. I think it was the week that Ernie Banks died. Actually, it was. I think the day that Ernie Banks died is when I met Tyler. R.I.P. Ernie. Let's play two. Yeah. So I've known Tyler a while. We haven't talked as much in recent years as we did earlier on, but it was really cool. It was really cool to catch up with him. We're going to have to do this again. But, yeah, we popped our sherry on interviews.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, that was fantastic. That was a fantastic pun there, but ooh. Oh, I felt that one.
I felt pretty proud of myself on that one, if I'm honest.
That was pretty good.
But that has been another episode of Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast. We, again, want to thank each and every one of you who have listened, who have watched, chimed in on YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is. We appreciate you. You can find us on Instagram, as always, above our video on YouTube. You can see I am at whiskey_weather, Michael at BNB_Burns. That's where you can find us on Instagram as people. As far as a podcast, that is Barrels.
As people?
That is Barrels, the letter N, Barrels Pod on Instagram, as well as Facebook and YouTube. You can find us on Twitter, Barrels and Barrels. And then Gmail is where you can email us, barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. I do want to shout out real quick Keith from the Bourbon Thieves. You can find him at New England Whiskey. He said that he was listening, and we said that we'd send a sticker out to anyone who emailed us. But he said we didn't put the email in the podcast. I know we did, but if we didn't,
oh, you idiots!
I'm gonna send you a sticker Keith. But if you're listening to this still and you want a sticker, reach out to us, barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. Michael's holding it up there on YouTube for you. We'll gladly get you one in the mail and talk to you about that as well. So thank you for listening to Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast, our first interview in the books. Hopefully we have some more down the line. It's been fun. It's been great. Michael, any last words?
Nope. Let's go.